a tale of two Americas playing out in the United States Senate. On one side, Senator Cory Booker, a New Jersey Democrat who spent months at the negotiating table, crafting what he called one of his proudest achievements in 12 years of public service. A bipartisan framework on cryptocurrency, a genuine attempt at governance. On the other side, a Republican Party that walked away from its own agreement while their leader in the White House cashes in on crypto to the tune of billions. Senator Booker didn't mince words today. A threat to democracy itself. But here's what makes this story worth your attention. He's still asking to finish the job together.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and also I want to echo the hard work of our staffs. We're kind of at the tip of the spear, but we know who does all the work, and they do a tremendous job. And in this case, it's very complex. I think we would all agree with that completely, and they've just done a wonderful job. At this time, I'd like to recognize Senator Booker, and it's been a real pleasure with him, working with him and his staff as we've gone forward. And because of his help, I think we were able to make significant progress.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, for your generous words. It's been actually a great experience working closely with you through this process. And I, too, want to thank the staffs. It's a great experience I have when I lean in so much. I get to know staff members on my Republican sides by name. Your staffer Nathan still has not shaved his head as I've requested, which I think is an obnoxious act of defiance. But despite that one small hiccup, this has been a great experience. I want to thank Senator Klobuchar, whose leadership and extraordinary partnership in this effort has really enabled us to move the ball down the line. It has really been a privilege to work on these issues. And when Senator Klobuchar asked me last fall to help advance this bill, my team and I have taken it very seriously, and I've been very grateful for a lot of the folks on this side of the table who have really, really leaned in to master some complex issues. Look, we are in a point in American history that is exciting. It should excite everybody in our country. Digital assets and the ecosystem of innovation around financial services, blockchain technology, and decentralization that surrounds them is already a $3 trillion market, a figure that represents millions of customers. It represents thousands and thousands of tech jobs, startups, small businesses across the country. We are seeing an innovation explosion going on because of blockchain technology. This should excite everyone. What I and so many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle see is that we are standing on the cusp of extraordinary humanity-changing breakthroughs that could give Americans a financial system that is faster, cheaper, and more inclusive. I have seen in my own community that the system we have right now often screws customers, hurts their ability to access financial markets. There is a democratizing force, or at least potential, that is moving across our country and across the world. And that's why in September, 12 Senate Democrats came together to say, we want a market structure bill. Because if we don't get market structure, the threats from around the world could actually make this light and possibility darkness and something we would regret. And so we laid out as Democrats what we needed to get there. It's why we have negotiated in good faith to get this bill done in this committee, through this committee. Senator Boozman and I have worked so closely together and productively. And in November, we were able to put together a bipartisan discussion draft, something I am so proud of. One of my better experiences in the Senate was getting this draft done and really putting together principles that have nothing to do with left and right, but principles that we could stand on with integrity. I believe that this could get the bipartisan support on the floor. In our joint press release, we said our bipartisan discussion draft included, and it's important to quote here, we said a clear definition of digital commodities and the establishment of a spot market digital commodity regulatory regime within the CFTC. We said together that we want robust consumer protections, including customer customer fund segregation requirements, conflicts of interest safeguards, appropriate customer disclosure requirements, and prohibitions on certain affiliated trading. We also said we want a trading registration regime designed to facilitate liquid and resilient regulated markets while, very important, protecting retail participants. We also said we want requirements for the CFTC and the SEC to coordinate and collaborate on necessary interagency rulemakings that this new area of technology demands. We also said, very importantly, we want protections for self-custody and innovative technology. We do not want to be criminalizing people who are writing code. And we said a new funding stream for the CFTC to stand up a spot market regulatory regime. The CFTC does not have the resources to do all that this committee is asking. And so I was excited. I went into the holidays. I got married. I had fun. It was extraordinary. And I came back to this committee. TMI? TMI, I'm sorry. I was so excited I almost drank milk in the committee too. But then I come back to Washington and start the year with the news that my Republican colleagues were walking away from the bipartisan process that produced the draft, and was also walking away from a lot of the very things that I read in the policy framework that held our agreement together. To be clear, the product before us today is not the bipartisan draft that we're working on. It was negotiated with two parties at the table, but it isn't in accord with the principles we laid out in November in a bipartisan way. However, despite this, I still deeply believe in the work that we've done. We've come so long. In football parlance, I don't know if you know anything about this, Senator Tuberville, but in football parlance, we moved from our own goal line all the way down 70 yards. We're almost in the red zone on this bill. And that frustrates me because I see a bipartisan glide path to land this plane, to punch through the end zone, and I hope Senator Tuberville and I can do an end zone dance together. But what divides us here isn't some fundamental disagreement on both sides. It really isn't. This is not some kind of regular Washington partisanship. We've got this short distance with a clear path forward. This path is, just like we did last year, for us to sit at a table and close out the remaining issues. In the time since pens have been down on the product that's before us today, I've continued working. I sat with stakeholders literally last night. We were clearing up some of the DeFi differences that are not reflected in this bill. We got stakeholder accord last night. To resolve these outstanding issues, we continue to narrow the gap. I'm at the negotiating table, and I'm working with some of the most interested stakeholders in finalizing what are the short strokes. Sorry to mix my metaphor, but in the short strokes, we're on the green. This isn't about partisan politics. This is about the process that we begin to heal and redeem Washington. This should be something we stay together and work together until we get it over the line, because I know this from Senator Boozman, who I also talked to yesterday. There's so much good faith here. I think Senator Boozman, Leader Thune, and then Chair Stabenow showed in 2022, when we introduced our first crypto bill together, that we could do great things. But right now, our inability to work together and move together in this final process is undermining our ability to get it done. I would be remiss before I conclude my remarks to just say, the White House has made this infinitely harder. And I've had private conversations with Republican colleagues, staffers, that agree with me. First of all, the fact that Donald Trump is grifting on crypto himself, it's like me creating a Cory coin. I'd probably prefer a Klobuchar coin. But this is ridiculous that the President of the United States and his family have made billions of dollars off of this industry and are still trying to create a framework here without the kind of ethics that would prevent this kind of gross corruption in our country that would undermine our nation's democracy. And then second, it's outrageous that we've seen in the last year an attack on independent agencies. How could we not have at the CFTC Democratic members at a time that we're doing this important work? So I'm just going to say right now, I've had one of the best experiences I've had in my 12 years in Washington working with Senator Boozman. Truly a good man, as we all know around this table. I'm simply asking, let's get back to work. We can finish this in the next week or two in a bipartisan way, have a celebration. I may drink some milk, soy, and we can dance in the end zone when we get this across the line. That's what I'm asking. But until then, we can't support this partisan draft. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey stood before the Senate Agriculture Committee and delivered what can only be described as a eulogy for bipartisanship. Not with anger, though. He had every right to be angry, but with something far more devastating: disappointment. Here is a man who genuinely believes in the institution, who spent months working across the aisle with Senator John Boozman of Arkansas on a cryptocurrency regulatory framework, who called that collaboration one of his proudest achievements in 12 years of service, who learned Republican staffers' names, who joked about someone named Nathan refusing to shave his head. Let's establish the facts. In November, Democrats and Republicans produced a bipartisan discussion draft for crypto regulation, a joint press release, shared principles, a handshake deal on a $3 trillion industry that affects millions of Americans. Then came January. And suddenly, the Republicans had a new draft, one that, in Booker's words, isn't in accord with the principles we laid out in November. What changed between November and January? Well, nothing changed, and that's precisely the problem. What was already happening simply continued. The President of the United States kept building his crypto fortune. Now, I want to be precise here, because words matter. And notice what else Booker revealed: that Republican colleagues and their staffers privately agree with him. They see the corruption. They know what's happening. They simply won't say it out loud. This is the architecture of complicity. This is how democracies decay, not with a dramatic collapse, but with 1,000 small surrenders. A averted gaze here, a silent vote there, a principle abandoned when it becomes inconvenient. But there's a deeper story here that deserves our attention. Senator Booker talked about what cryptocurrency could be: a faster financial system, a cheaper financial system, a more inclusive financial system. He spoke about communities, his communities that have been, in his words, screwed by the current system, locked out of financial markets, denied access to opportunity,